I'm Joe Texas, cinematographer. I do media production. You're basically faced with copyright situations whereby monuments are protected, most of them, you know, and also accessing those monuments is a mission. Whether you're doing drone or you're shooting a music video or you basically want to put a camera in there, it's just a mission, you know what I'm saying? Because that law, the copyright law, has not been adjusted or attended to for quite some time.
My name is Douglas Scott. I'm an editor on Wikipedia. Been an editor for 10 years now, and Wikipedia is the 5th largest website in the world. It is an online free encyclopedia. So I'm taking pictures of these statues for use on Wikipedia to illustrate the articles relevant to these statues, right? So, for example, an article on the waterfront. So I'm allowed to take the photographs, but due to the way the current copyright law is written, we're not able to put them on Wikipedia. So panorama, this is a panorama. What you see before here is a panorama. But what we mean by freedom panorama is the ability to take photographs in a panoramic type of setting, which is to say, sort of in a public space. And share them freely, whether that be over the internet, whether that be incorporating them to our own works of art. We are allowed to do that. And we don't have to worry about violating the copyrights. So the answer with fair use is that they're slightly different, but they're related concepts, freedom of panorama and fair use. Freedom of panorama refers to something very specific. Fair use is much broader. So fair use would say, it's assumed that me taking a photograph here is okay so long as I am not violating the rights of the author of the work, the sculptor in this case, to derive an income from their work.
What are you doing? What are you doing? You want to arrest me as a member of the international media to tell you to stop firing? Is that what you're trying to arrest me for?
Yeah, I was making a film about coming home to South Africa. One of my first big films, Born into Struggle. We arrived at the airport here at OR Tambo, and we were questioned by Reuters, and I wanted to get access to that material. And that cost me 700 Rand at the time, which was a lot of money 20 years ago, and actually 35,000 Rand to buy. The image of me and my father talking to camera about returning to South Africa.
Oh, it's fantastic. I feel really great. A bit nervous, you know. Don't know really what to expect, and there's a lot of work to be done, and a lot of people to be seen, and I want to play my part in that process.
Now, lucky enough, the project was well enough supported where I could just about afford to pay. But I made very little money on that film. It took me years to make, and I'm having to spend hundreds of thousands of rands to the likes of BBC, Reuters, ITN, AP, and all these other big monopolies who control our images in order to tell my own story.
I'm Denise Nicholson, the Scholarly Communications Librarian at Wits University. The copyright reform that is happening at the moment is to address the very outdated bill that we have. I think we must remember that universities are producers of information. They publish, they use information, they distribute information, they teach with information, they do research, so they're producing new knowledge. So we don't want free anything. Fair use has 4 criteria which you have to meet before you can copy, and not everything is fair. You can't copy a whole book and then make 2,000 copies for your students. That is not fair. If we had fair use, particularly orphan works where you don't know where the rights holders are, we have collections where we can't digitize them. We can't even get permission because we can't find the rights owners. Well, I think the large publications that we do use come from mainly America or the UK, And America has fair use, but they're not keen for us to have it for some reason, or it appears from the rights owners that have objected to fair use. And it's probably because they're making a lot of money from copyright fees at the moment.
I'm Wandile Jamini. I'm a student at the University of Constant Torture, University of Colonial Thinking. There are many other things we can describe this university as, but formally it is known as the University of Cape Town. I am a fallist, I'm a trans person. Textbooks are the cornerstone to many, many, many courses. Without the textbook, you run the risk of failing. And the textbooks that lecturers choose are often European or American based, and because of that, because of factors such as exchange rate, import tax, and other factors, these textbooks are incredibly expensive. So we find ourselves in this situation there. You cannot afford the textbook. The natural question that's asked afterwards is, why don't you go to the library? The issue with that is that the library is not sufficiently funded. So now it becomes this process of those who can't afford the textbook need to enter a sharing process. And especially when there's high pressure moments in the semester, such as an up and coming test, and the textbook has already been taken out. So what are you going to do in that moment where you don't have access to the textbook, but the test is coming up? So our absolute last resort, and quite frankly, I really think our hand has been forced into the situation, is to illegally copy textbooks. It is unfair for us who are trying to learn, where we copy a textbook and copyright treats us as if we're trying to compete with the publisher or compete with the author. I simply want to access this knowledge because it's fundamental to my learning process, and it is fundamental for me to complete this degree so that I can contribute to the society. But the copyright law as it stands criminalizes me for learning in an institution of higher learning.
My name's Eve Gray, and I work in the IP unit at UCT as an independent consultant. Textbooks are not a fair market, journals are not a fair market. There are all kinds of provisions in copyright and in business models and in relationships between publishers, particularly big publishers from the United States, and the consumers of the products on the ground. And one of the questions you'd ask in a country like South Africa is, surely with our students and the huge financial problems that they face, surely they should be able to get free textbooks whenever that's possible. After the Second World War, knowledge was very, very powerful. We dropped an atom bomb. Scientific knowledge underpinned the atom bomb. And the big powers realized that knowledge was very, very important and very strategic. And so in the late 1940s and 1950s, there were strong moves by the big powers to grab hold of knowledge and to control it, so that the dissemination of knowledge came from Britain and the US and from the major powers. That's in fact where it comes from. It is a colonial effort.
We should be clear that we're not here out of our self-interest. We're here because our founding mandate is to defend and advance freedom of expression and the free flow of information and access to information. That information shouldn't be locked up and privatized. That said, of course, everyone is going to be impacted by this law. Anyone, I mean, here we've just got examples of some of the publications we've produced, some of our newsletters. Very often we're drawing on the intellectual property of others, photographs that have been taken in marches, in public spaces, and it's very important for us that there needs to be a fair use clause that allows public interest use of intellectual property so that we can produce the kind of popular education material that we rely on to build this campaign.
I'm Jace Nair, the CEO of Blind SA and the chairperson of the South African Right to Read Coalition. The process of producing an accessible format first meant that we needed to get a license or a approval from publishers or the rights holders to produce that book in an accessible format. Fair use would allow us firstly to make sure that the book is available in an accessible format. And it would also allow us to share across borders. For example, The Long Walk to Freedom was produced by Blind Essay, but we couldn't share that to the world. Similarly, the Harry Potter series was produced in 8 different countries. If that was produced in one country, the 7 other countries could have produced 7 other publications. So fair use would allow us access to thousands of accessible titles that are produced in other countries.
I'm Nick Hall. I'm the head of Interactive Entertainment South Africa and a copyright lawyer. I think the economic benefits for fair use, especially to the gaming environment, or to game development, can be clearly illustrated from South Africa's best-selling game, which was a game by the name of Broforce, which relies heavily on fair use to be able to remix and reimagine existing cultural characters from sort of the American 80s. That game has managed to sell over 1.5 million units. And that wouldn't have been possible if they didn't have the protection of the United States copyright doctrine of fair use, which allows them to take the IP which is housed there and reimagine it and remix it in an interesting and novel way.
I'm flying in a public space. So, hence I was saying earlier on, they need to broaden the fair use clause. I can't narrow my lens.